Stand and join me in a salute to the flag, and then please stay standing. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence in memory of Ann M. O'Connell, retired teacher who passed away on May 28th of 2021. And also for Edward J. Clancy Jr., Chip Clancy, former city councilor, state representative, state senator, mayor, chairman of the school committee, over 4 decades of public service to this community. I'd like to ask for moments of silence for both of those members of our community. Thank you. First on the agenda tonight is the minutes. Would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes of the Personnel Subcommittee meeting on May 13th, 2021.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call required.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
Make a motion to accept the
One more.
Oh,
Mary.
I'm sorry,
Mary Jules.
apologize.
I believe you need to do a roll call.
Yep.
To start the meeting.
Oh,
Oh, so sorry.
thank you, Mary. So we will do a roll call for to identify members that are here. Is there would you roll call the members that are here as well as the members that will be participating in the just recognizing the members that will be participating in the meeting as we've done.
Certainly.
Again, this is we're back from Zoom. So we're back to where we've been a while ago. So
Member Castellanos?
Present.
Member Capola?
Present.
Member Ford?
Present.
Member Gately?
Present.
Member Nicholson?
Present.
Member Satterwhite?
Present.
Mayor McGee?
present.
And for the record, also present is Dr. Tutwiler, Superintendent, Ms. Kimberly Powers, Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Deborah Gero, Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Kevin McHugh, School Business Administrator, Ms. Mary Jules, Secretary of the School Committee, and Attorney Markopoulos.
To entertain another motion?
Yes, I'll
Member
make a
Capola?
motion to accept the 9th regular meeting with executive session minutes on May 13th, 2021.
Second.
Second, roll call required.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
And make a motion to accept the 10th regular meeting on May 27th, 2021.
Second.
Roll call required. There's been a motion and a second made.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Next on the agenda is appointment and elections. Dr. Tutwiler?
Yep, happy to. We've got a number of appointments to celebrate this evening. I'll start with the 3 appointments to the position of PC Land Tech, and that is Giovanni Morales, Evan McHugh, and Dwayne Dillard. Very excited to welcome them to that team. Very significant need in that area, as you know. Also want to congratulate Robert, also known as Bobby Bishop, who's been appointed as a school adjustment counselor, number of successful years as a social worker in the district, big community member, and we're excited to see him move on to that new role. Next, with respect to the Executive Director of Human Resources, as you all know, the district has gone without a Director of Human Resources for 2 years. It's no one's fault, and the members of the HR team have done a really good job keeping that department afloat. You'll recall that we posted the position and held interviews in the early spring months. There were solid candidates, but we didn't feel strongly enough about any one candidate to finalize the hire. In the second round, one candidate clearly stood out. Not only was this candidate the best fit for the role, but someone about whom we were all very excited. Carrie Fabali comes to the role of Executive Director of Human Resources with 13 years of experience, a number of which were in districts very similar to ours. Beyond the depth of knowledge and the substance of her experience, Carrie is an innovator. She has modernized HR departments in her experience in the past. That seemed to be a common theme among her references. What is more, she brings incredible energy and a collaborative spirit that we believe will help establish the Human Resources Department as one of the best in these parts. So I'm thrilled to announce my selection as Executive Director of HR, Carrie Fabali, who could not join us this evening, but in spirit, her ears are ringing right now. We welcome her. And then finally, if I may, Mayor, for Supervisor.
Are those all of the members are those all of the
Oh, we got
appointments?
one more.
Okay.
One more. And this will require an action from the school committee. I'm thrilled to recommend for the position of attendance supervisor a candidate who I believe will not only make a significant impact on our attendance initiative, but will be a great partner and colleague. The position was posted yielding just imagine if I was sitting there listening to this being said about me. The position was posted yielding a solid pool of candidates. The committee, including members of the attendance team, the executive director of social emotional learning, 2 school committee members, and members of the administration team, assembled to develop and refine a set of questions. And mind you, the questions require candidates to have a depth of understanding of our mindset around attendance as a risk factor, as well as an equity lens on the work. The questions were presented to all of the candidates during the interviews, and one candidate simply blew us away. Lauren Walsh is currently a response supervisor at the Department of Children and Families, a role that's very closely related to the role of attendance supervisor. She comes to this process with 7 years of work in the clinical field, which includes holding leadership roles. Lauren understands the work. The depth of her answers conveyed to us a strong grasp on our approach to addressing attendance issues in the district, which is somewhat unlike the efforts engaged in other districts. As a resident of the city, she is intimately connected with community agencies and professionals, which will make the transition to the role seamless. Aside from qualifications and experience, both of which were impressive, Lauren felt like a natural fit for the team. Her references use descriptors like exemplary, collaborative, and motivated to describe her. In my view, I feel fortunate to be in the position to recommend her for hire as the co-attendance supervisor of attendance for the Lynn Public Schools, and she's here, and I'll welcome her to come to the table.
Okay.
Welcome, Lauren. If you want to have anything to say, but in the meantime, and we have some questions from the members. Member Satterwhite?
First, I just wanted to, obviously address the previous position that he just mentioned, the Executive Director of Human Resources. I was a part of that, and everything that the superintendent said was spot on. I was also so gracious to be a part of the interview with Lauren and the other candidates, and I can tell you, based off of what Dr. Tutwiler said, is completely accurate. He came in right when COVID was a little iffy, and you interviewed and you answered the questions in depth and with data and actual knowledge as to what we were hoping to do in this district. And I'm happy that you're the selection that's being presented to us tonight. So I just want to thank you for coming and putting yourself out there to be a part of the district.
Thank you very much.
Member Gately?
I was also on the screening committee, and I was very impressed that you had come before us before, and we gave you some recommendations and asked you to go out and do some things, get some more experience and some supervisor experience. And when you came back, and I know my panel that was on there, you hit a home run. Like, every question was like to the level, the depth that we're looking for in a candidate. And I'm very, very pleased that you are his recommendation. I'm so happy.
Member Capola?
And Lauren, I hear more importantly that you do live in Lynn and you are a product of the Lynn Public Schools.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
dearly appreciate it.
Any
I'd
other?
like to put the name of, oh, is anybody else? I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
I'd like to
And
put the name forward of Lauren Walsh for supervisor of attendance. Oh, I'm sorry, Lauren. I'm stealing your
wanna speak?
thunder. Do you want to speak?
we-
Lauren, do you want to
we've heard some great things about you.
first?
We've heard some great things about you, Lauren. I think we're all excited to do what the next step is, do a roll call and appoint you to the position. Really excited to be part of this, to have you, bring you on the team. And I think Dr. Tutwiler and the members who had a chance to go through the interview process laid out the great skills you bring to the job. So it's exciting. And there's a motion on the table to accept you in this position. And there's a second, and it requires a roll call.
Member Castellanos?
Lauren Walsh.
Ms. Capola?
Lauren Walsh.
Member Ford?
Lauren Walsh.
Member Gately?
Lauren Walsh.
Member Nicholson?
Lauren Walsh.
Member Satterwhite?
Lauren Walsh.
Mayor McGee?
Lauren Walsh. Lauren, congratulations. Next on the agenda is under new business field trip request. Dr. Tutwiler, would you like to
Certainly.
to that, please?
Absolutely, and I'll invite the classical faculty member to come forward to answer any questions, but yet again, another sign that we are moving closer to normalcy with another field trip request for taking students to Europe during the April vacation of 2022. Sound like a broken record. I am a staunch advocate of these sorts of trips for all the educational reasons, but also the experiential ones. And so I seek the committee's support for this wonderful experience for students. And I don't know if you want to offer any details also.
Oh, absolutely. First off, I apologize. I don't have any itinerary for you currently. We had a little bit of an emergency apparently at my house today where my nephew desperately needed printer paper to color. Last paper. Itinerary is to leave the Thursday evening right before Good Friday for April vacation and fly to Berlin. We're going to visit Berlin, Dresden, then we're going to stop on our way to Prague at the Terezin Ghetto and Theresienstadt concentration camp, which was the Nazis' exemplar to the Red Cross, showing that the Jews there were being treated fairly, where they were. It was where the most art and music and everything came from during the Holocaust. And then we're going to go to Prague. We're going to have a quick stop in the second largest city in the Czech Republic, Brno, and then we will end the trip in Vienna, in Austria.
I'm impressed by your memory of the
I've gone on multiple trips through Salem
Okay,
State, and
yeah.
this was very, I basically took a trip I went on
Yep.
and made it my own for high school students. So
Awesome.
Great. Sounds like a great trip, great opportunity for the
Yeah.
students.
I think it will.
Yeah, absolutely. So it requires a roll call. Is there entertain a motion?
Make a motion to grant permission for the field trip request for classical high school students of 21 to Europe, April vacation 2022.
Second?
There's a second. Requires a roll call.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Before we get to the next agenda, and I'm just as we are in our opportunity to be here in person for the first time, and the what's been going on in the community. As of last Friday, we were at 57%. We'll know tomorrow. 57% of at least first vaccinations. 48% of the community is fully vaccinated, which is closing on 50,000 people in Lynn, and it has really led to a change in our in what's happening. We were out of the red into the yellow, into the green, and now we've been into the green for several weeks, and we're going in a great direction. So the vaccinations have been a huge part of that opportunity. A lot of hard work went into it to get us to this point. A lot of people in the, all of the employees, the teachers, the nurses, the administration in the schools going through this whole process, getting us back on the right track. The community at large really helping us to get through this in what's been a really challenging time. So I just want to reiterate the importance of vaccinations. I think it's an opportunity for us to recognize that. It's safe, it's effective, and it's really made a difference for the Commonwealth, and it's really made a difference for here for the community, for all of us to start to get back to normal. So it's an opportunity to thank everyone for the hard work over the last 15 months and to continue to highlight the importance of the vaccines and what they've meant for our community. So great job for everyone, and we'll continue to go in that direction. We're not at the finish line, but we're heading in that direction, which is great. So thank everyone here on the committee and everyone else who's been a part of that effort to move us in a good direction. Next on the agenda is mental health curriculum from Member Castellanos.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for highlighting the struggles. It's a good segue into this issue. You know, mental health. This pandemic has generated so many areas of need in the area of mental health, and I'm bringing forth our students' voice. This agenda item was presented to me earlier in June. Myself and Antonio Anderson from Lynn English High School, we had an opportunity to present to an 8th grade civics class. That's actually Mrs. Winter's 8th grade B Perry class. And we had the opportunity to share our own experiences with mental health and those struggles. Because mental health struggles have no biases. It hits everyone. And it's something for me that hit me deeply growing up throughout my upbringing, and I felt compelled to activate those students' voices and to deliver a message that they wrote after we were presented some key items that they presented to us. It was very important to make sure that their voices make it to the table. And a matter of fact, they are watching this meeting. And I did make a promise to them, and I will read their words. And this is the students in Mrs. Winters B. Perry class at Breed Middle School. Here it goes. You watching? The curriculum was last updated in 1999, and they're referring to the mental health curriculum. Our cause is looking for ways to fix this dilemma. Many people struggle with mental health issues. Many of these issues have been brought to light due to the pandemic. It is more important than ever that we advocate for an updated curriculum that includes strategies to identify mental health issues, cyberbullying, and internet safety. We are asking you and the school committee to implement a curriculum that will improve students' ability to deal with mental health issues. In addition, the LPS website should include up-to-date social worker information and resources for families who have a member struggling with mental health. Sincerely, the students in Mrs. Winter B's Perry class at Breed Middle School. And just in terms of just giving a thank you to Mike Gary reached out immediately. I think you guys responded. As soon as I sent this out, I want to say thank you for the prompt and just the discussion that we had. It was very forthcoming, very transparent. See, DESE hasn't released any standards. The state, when we look at an updated, bold, date like that in 1999, it really screams. But when you unpeel what we've done, I think Lynn Public Schools has taken extreme initiatives, especially with the last 4 years. Having the budget that I got to review the past few weeks, it's represented a lot of the clinical support that we've been anxiously waiting for. And I am here to publicly, express that I will be working. This is a top priority for me. I'll be working with Mike Gary and his team. And Member Ford has been on that advisory channel for a while now. Very, very excited for that. And to really wrap it up, this is so vital for us to really take seriously. The wrath of mental health is upon us. We are in the middle of a really tough transition. This is just, and as the mayor spoke, as the world opens up, we're going to start to realize the damages. And psychologically, you have to have the right people trained to identify these issues that we're talking about. A lot of the identified mental health struggles really go unseen. And it's very important that we have a lens of trauma-informed practice, a lens of SEL, just best practice for we can prevent further damage. And I think as a priority, it is a top priority. And this is something that really means daily to our students. And it's not just like I said it before, they're not future leaders, they are leaders. So thank you.
Member Satterwhite?
So after Brian and Mr. Anderson went to speak to the classes, there was an overall civic engagement assembly at Breed in which they presented certain things that they wanted to happen in our city. Dr. Tutwiler did film a video that they played during the ceremony, which was great. And a part of the process was what they deemed to be important and how they can make what they believe is important into action and then into law. So it was great for them to understand how that process takes place. So they had a chart. You have an idea. Well, where do you bring that idea? Who can then put that idea into law? And then what do you do with it? And some of the things they presented was actually on the student IDs was putting a mental health 800 number in the event that a student is having a mental health breakdown. And these ideas were brilliant, and these ideas can be easily put into place. And they were pushing for curriculum changes because we're talking about 1999. I think I was in the 8th grade. So 1999, yes. So, it's been a long time.
You're a youngster, Mike.
I'll be 37 this year, but it's these kids need a voice. These kids use their voice, and they actually brought people in that had expertise in the areas, which was great. Brian obviously is a social worker. He deals with a plethora of things with the youth. And when I met with these kids, that was the reason why they invited him to speak to the class. And they took the information that he provided and put the data together and made those presentations. It was a wonderful experience. A lot of them are filmed, so if any of the members are interested, definitely reach out to the teachers to see the work that these students have done. Mental health is something that many kids deal with. My sister dealt with it in school, as well as my mom, and it was never addressed. So you kind of feel like you're on the outside of things, but it should be addressed. So I agree wholeheartedly with Brian's push for the mental health curriculum, and I know that we have a curriculum subcommittee, and I'm sure that the members probably also agree with pushing that forward. So again, they raved about you. Kids, great job on what you did with the civic engagement, and again, I support that. Thank you.
Member Nicholson?
Thank you. I want to thank Member Castellanos for the presentation and for representing us and for the excellent report and support that you've shown these students. I'd also like to thank the students and please thank them on our behalf for the tremendous work and sharing their thoughts on a really important issue and identifying the issue to begin with as something that we need to be aware of. I think it's a great example of the work that the civic curriculum is doing to have this be the result of that learning. So we just want to say that. Thank you to the teachers who supported the students to get this all together, and to the work that the district is doing on making civics so much a part of, so connected to students' daily lives as a way to empower students to be advocating for the kind of change that they want to see in their community. A couple different aspects of the curriculum implicated here, and all wonderful. So thank you.
Any other questions? So, Dr. Tutwiler?
Yeah, just quickly. This is a part and parcel of a civics project. Wanted to let the committee know that just yesterday we got news of a $60,000 grant to support that work in the district for next year. And this specific project dealt with mental health, and you'll see very clearly in the budget proposal our commitment to that.
So
Member Gately?
was that Shannon Gardner?
None other than.
Thank you, Shannon Gardner, wherever you are.
Thank you, Shannon.
Member Castellanos?
And I know Mike is here. Mike, would you want to say a couple words and kind of? Yeah, sorry.
Please
Mike.
come,
I just
please.
know we talked in depth for a while on the phone.
Thank you, Mike.
Hey, everybody, just to add on to what you were talking about, Member Castellanos, we have a health advisory committee, which you were talking about, which Member Ford has sat on, you know, as the school committee representative before my time, and I think he's on it. We have Deputy Superintendent Ruggiero's on it, Mr. Maris from the Health Department. So it's a health committee that gets together and meets quarterly and just discusses any issues that kind of fall under that health umbrella. And I always say it's a broad umbrella: sports, nursing, phys ed, food service. And really, the role of that committee is to recommend any, you know, changes or anything we can do to bring forward to the superintendent and the school committee. So I think that'll be a great thing to put on there.
Just don't bury me while I'm still.
January, the fourth Monday in January. Come on.
You have a long way to go, John.
I-
Member Gately?
I just want to say to you, Michael, it was, this came up, and you called me as the chairperson of curriculum and let me know what was going on. And I truly appreciated that phone call, and then to hear this from Brian and from the students that breathe. Thank you so much for all your input. Keep it coming.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Thanks for that discussion. Next on the agenda is the F 2022 budget general discussion. Dr. Tutwiler, you'll be leading us through this discussion?
I have a presentation ready to go,
That's
but,
great.
you know, we've not been in person for 15 months, and, you know, for a first time back, there had to be at least one wrinkle. So the computer that we used to present decided that it wanted to update, and those who know our computers know that is not a quick process. So that's my computer, and it's all set up, ready to go. Only problem is my notes are on there. So if we could just have 30 seconds while I grab those
Yep.
off of there.
Absolutely.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Brief recess.
Yep.
I'm back.
Catch my breath.
We're gonna. So we'll wait. When Member Gately gets to her seat, we can back and.
I'm here to talk. I'm here. I crawled in.
Thank you.
I'm back.
Members ready? We're ready to move forward. Dr. Tutwiler, you're prepared to start?
I am.
Great. Thank you.
Happy to present to the school committee an FY22 budget. The committee's already received a budget book, complete with all of the updates, including a budget narrative. And what I'd like to do now is just briefly sort of talk through what it is that budget does for the deserving students and staff, families in the Lynn Public Schools. That's interesting. The Lynn Public Schools will receive an increase of a little more than $14 million in Chapter 7 funds for FY22. The city CFO has indicated that the school department budget allocation for FY22 will be a little more than $180 million. This represents a $10.9 million increase over the FY21 budget. The Student Opportunity Act, as you know, was delayed due to the pandemic. State funding in FY22 represents the first of a 7-year commitment of the SOA to address longstanding issues in school districts like ours, with an updated funding formula. The district plan for how the Student Opportunity Act funds would be allocated was adopted by the school committee in January of 2021, this year. As I've mentioned before, in some ways we find ourselves in a somewhat serendipitous time. At the close of the 2018-19 school year, we completed a robust, input-driven strategic plan designed to drive decisions and plans over the course of the ensuing 5 years. During the 2019-2020 school year, the Student Opportunity Act was passed at the state level, guaranteeing significant increases in state funding for districts like ours. Due to the pandemic, the Student Opportunity Act funding is not set to begin until the fiscal year in which the following school year occurs. In any case, we have a unique opportunity where there's appropriate funding to support the ideas and strategy outlined in the strategic plan. If you recall, I often use some sort of visual to characterize the essence of the budget that I'm presenting, and I usually present it at the end. It seemed most prudent to share the visual now to lay the foundation. In many ways, this budget proposal represents the merger of plans, ideas, even some wishes, with increased funding to bring them to fruition. With this scenario in play, we designed a budget development process. The graphic that you see now on the screen should serve as a reminder, although some of the dates are different than in the original iteration. In total, the idea here is to demonstrate a process that is collaborative, streamlined, and data and communication rich. From the development of the reflection forms to multiple touch points with our building leaders and directors, we really wanted the development of this budget to reflect work done with, not to. That doesn't mean that every request, oh, thank you, Deb, or wish was accommodated. It does mean that there was plenty of conversation around ideas and decisions. With the strategic plan complete, we're also required to develop a plan for how the additional state funds would be spent. Giving full respect to that process, it was no surprise to us that the same priorities that stakeholders identified during the strategic plan development also arose during input gathering on how the Student Opportunity Act funds should be allocated. As such, there's a perfect harmony between our strategic and Student Opportunity Act plans. You might recall by regulation that the Student Opportunity Act plans needed to be anchored in one of 17 research-based strategies identified by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. On the left-hand side of the graphic there, each one of those proposed actions represents an action or strategy derived from broad input from community and school-based stakeholders. Each aligns with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education research-based strategy and pushes us closer to achieving one of our strategic objectives outlined in our strategic plan, which are on the right-hand side of the graphic. Over the next 5 slides, including the one you're currently viewing, I'll provide for you a high-level overview of some of the proposed additions that reflect the Student Opportunity Act plan, aligned with the strategic objective. In this slide, just going back to what we were just talking about with Member Castellanos, we outline our plan to increase personnel to support holistic student needs. We intend to do so by the addition of 19 social workers and 3 school adjustment counselors. We devised a plan for the additional social workers that allows for at least 1 social worker per grade in the secondary schools and 2 social workers at our larger elementary schools and at least 1 at every other elementary school. Clearly, this is part and parcel of a robust effort to meet the social and emotional needs of every student and family as outlined in the strategic objective number 2, detailed in the bottom corner of this slide, which I realize is hard to see if you're in the room. With an existing evidence-based inclusion model in special education, another focus of the allotment of the SOA funds, or Student Opportunity Act funds, in the first year is to fundamentally and comprehensively address longstanding service delivery shortcomings in special education based exclusively on understaffing. For years, LPS has struggled to meet the needs of students with disabilities. The staff have gone to incredible lengths to serve students, but caseloads have been unwieldy. With the addition of 31 positions in special education, we expect to take a significant step forward in the program with service delivery. Not only will this allow us to more reliably provide services to students on students' plans, we expect to be better meeting timelines. The focus of this part of the plan aligns with strategic objective number 1, outlined in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. Since I became superintendent, improving the progress toward English proficiency among English learners has been a goal of mine, a goal of ours. Building on an inclusive plan already in place, the addition of 11 English as a second language teachers will allow us to maintain existing caseloads at a minimum in the upcoming year and decrease them in some places. The addition also aligns with objective number 1 of our strategic plan. Finally, in the realm of instruction, we intend to add 16 technology teachers at the elementary level. The addition of these teachers allows for students to engage with and deepen skills in technology and digital literacy. Further, the addition allows classroom teachers at the elementary level an additional preparation period each week. This is critical time for assessing student work, planning, outreach to family, and/or collaboration. This aligns with DESE's research-based practice and supports progress towards strategic objective number 1 in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. In our original plan, we plan to include an administrative level position whose exclusive focus is family and community engagement. We're exploring other pathways toward that end, but are thrilled to announce the addition of enough parent liaisons to ensure that every school has 1 and larger schools have 2. Further, we've included the position in the Welcome Center, the substance of which is designed to develop and deepen relationships with families from the point of registration. We see this as a big step forward related to strategic objective number 4, which is focused on family and community partnerships. Thus far, I've made clear how the increased funding allows us to address longstanding staffing issues in really important realms of the district. One such gap exists in curriculum development, professional learning, and support in 2 core content areas. The budget proposal calls for the addition of the assistant directors of curriculum for ELA and mathematics. For ELA, at the secondary level, the current scenario involves gaps in support and supervision. The historical as well as the current focus has been at the elementary grade levels. As a result, the department has sought out support from another assistant director with secondary ELA experience, even though the responsibilities are outside of that individual's role. For a content area so fundamental to learning, there should be a dedicated professional to support and lead development or identification of curriculum, related professional development, and supports for department heads on this level. With respect to mathematics, there is 1 professional who's responsible for all mathematics content, curriculum, professional learning, and coaching support for grades K through 12. For 1 individual to have deep knowledge on all math content, along with all math content areas, along with the nuances of mathematical instruction and professional development at all 3 levels, is asking a lot. Further, from the standpoint of capacity, it is nearly impossible to provide meaningful support at all levels by 1 person. The same argument, frankly, applies to the assistant director of ELA. What is proposed in the current budget is a much more thoughtful approach to support in these 2 core content areas. It is recommended that there be an assistant director of ELA at the elementary level and 1 for the secondary level. The same is proposed for mathematics. Not only will this allow for these professionals to target and do a deep dive into specific developmentally appropriate curriculum, instruction, and related professional development, they will further have the capacity to provide more hands-on coaching support. I envision these leaders working closely with one another to ensure a seamless and rich experience for students at all levels and a more supportive model for those who are delivering instruction. The FY22 budget includes the addition of nearly 200 positions. all of which are critical to supporting student needs. In many ways, what we are proposing reflects the true spirit and goal of the Student Opportunity Act. Perhaps more importantly, it reflects the community's input. In this graphic here, you can see that the overwhelming majority of the proposed positions are direct service professional positions. There are smaller percentages of leadership and operations roles. What one should take from this is a commitment to improvements that will be felt by students and families immediately. There is absolutely a place for operations and leadership as well. The support and guidance comes from those positions. In year one of the Student Opportunity Act, it seemed prudent and necessary, nonetheless, if not critical, to begin with direct service. What I've highlighted thus far in this presentation are a number of additions or increases that reflect a commitment to and alignment with the Student Opportunity Act and community feedback. There are other elements that arose during the budget process and in reflection on the year that we intend to embrace next year. I'm just going to share a few elements of that at a high level. With respect to scheduling, we'll be presenting at our next meeting an altered schedule to be implemented at English and Classical. With respect to all schools, we will be beholden to the Department of Elementary and Secondary mandate on full in-person learning next year, which is not a bad thing. Nonetheless, within the day, the blended learning approach allows us the opportunity to leverage multiple modalities of learning for student benefit. Related, there will be a notable focus on blended learning and professional development next year. Further, we'll be making a proposal to safeguard some of the teacher collaboration time that was so incredibly critical from which we benefited greatly this year. And then finally, there is unanimity around the idea that family engagement increased with the convenience of the Zoom platform afforded to families. We will continue our Zoom license for next year with hopes of offering that convenience for families and continuing our connection with them. Finally, it behooves me to acknowledge that the budget proposal allows us to meet all contractual obligations and responsibilities relative to LPS professionals. We've also built in what it would take to cover the cost of transportation for next year. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Member Nicholson, Member Ford, then Member Satterwhite.
Thank you.
Good. No, you're right.
Thank you, Dr. Tutwiler, for the presentation, and then also thank you to the whole team that put this together, from the educators that submitted the input to Commissioner McHugh and his team. Appreciate the binder and then also the overview. I think it's really helpful to see the changes connected specifically to the Student Opportunity Act plan, because that's where we are right now in year one, and that was put together with some really thoughtful input from a lot of different stakeholders. So I had submitted my questions in advance, received the answers, so thank you for that. I know that takes coordination to get answers from everybody, so I do appreciate it. I just had a couple follow-up questions on those answers, and then a couple things that have come up recently. Sure. So for the first question about the ESSER grant, that appreciate the amounts there in the plan. The follow-up question I had was about the ESSER 3 funds and the plan that's going to be submitted in October. I think we're seeing the utility of having that thoughtful, inclusive planning process in the way we're using the Student Opportunity Act plan today, to this day, and was wondering what kind of process is going to be in place as that plan is written for the ESSER 3 funds.
Yeah. I'll take this question if that's all right, Mr. McHugh. I actually addressed that in my superintendent's report, but we're only just sort of recently coming to understand the requirements around how the money can be spent for stakeholder input. And now that we have those ideas and we know the dates by which something should be submitted, really the next step is to develop a plan around that. We know that it requires broad stakeholder input, which we actually really appreciate and have some experience doing, as you mentioned, with the Student Opportunity Act. So as I mentioned in our in my superintendent's report, that's really the work of the summer, is to really develop a framework around that and begin to execute it late summer, early fall.
Okay, that sounds great.
I will also say I've received a number of emails and phone calls from parents and from members of the community who are aware of this opportunity and want to participate, and I've been really appreciative of that.
Yeah, same here, and that's part of why I asked, because I know people are waiting for that opportunity, and so that's great to hear that is coming in the works. The next one I want to follow up on, and I think, as we've done in the past, and so because we're not asking and answering these questions in the open meeting, we're going to share these answers, compile them, and publish them, so that, just as an efficiency point of view, we're not going through all the questions you already answered. But yeah, okay.
Appreciate that.
For the FECT O'Leary, the proposal on adding more vocational programming, I understand that's a future. I mean, I think that's tremendous, adding other vocational opportunities. We know we're limited by capacity at Tech and have started that at FECTO, but would be curious in learning at some point a little bit more about how the vocational program we have there has gone, because I know we added that recently, and sort of a little bit more about what those plans are for the future to expand it.
Deputy Superintendent Ruggiero, do you want to speak to that?
I would actually say that it's been successful over there. I think Mayor McGee can attest to the carpentry work that's going on over there.
Excellent work done by those students.
They made 2 beautiful Adirondack chairs for him to wish him well on his retirement.
Very nice,
I know the culinary program has been very successful. I myself have donated lots of dishes and pans and utensils to help keep their stash going. I think what Mara is really looking to do is really establish something in-house for her students. She has talked about IT being a piece. We're really at the beginning stages of trying to come up with a proposal, an actual proposal of what she wants to do. But she definitely sees that her students are asking for this. They want to have more opportunity with this. And you're right, the space in tech to take on more students is challenging. And so I think FECTO has the capacity to do it. They have the space there to do it, and I think it has the potential of being a great program.
Yeah, no, that's great. I definitely supportive of that, and I know we've been thinking creatively about how to get around those capacity limitations with things like the After Dark program and what's going on in FECTO. So that's great. The other question I wanted to follow up on was the one about the website. I think this is an area where we've gotten some feedback on from the community, including during the last year when I think people were spending more time online. Appreciate that the increase in billing costs is the cost of the vendor going up. But I think, do we have a longer term plan about what it would take to get that in a place where we feel like we're getting the most out of its potential as a platform to reach people?
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. McHugh to remind me of where we are in terms of contract year with the website vendor.
I think it expires in October. So this coming October, it's like a 1-year extension. We did a 1-year extension because of the COVID for this year.
So, and I think that was renewed maybe in June of 20, I believe. But in any case, it was at a time that no one had the capacity to think about, migrating to a new platform. And I will say that the webmaster, I mean, this is not an evaluation of the individual, but was extremely helpful during the process of trying to keep families and students updated on the website. And at the same time, I would say, and he's heard me say this to him, it's not a very dynamic platform, and you know, at risk of some embarrassment, I'll share. I mean, it's not updated either. I mean, I found something about No Child Left Behind on there a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, how is this still here? But I think that highlights an issue, is that there's no one who's sort of minding that, you know, and regularly refreshing and updating that. And I think it's not a function of, well, can't you just ask somebody to do it? I don't think anyone has the capacity to take that on as a thing. So I think we need to think through, we've got the summer months to think that over. We've got an opportunity to think about something different and better. And I think the quickest thing that we can do that, you know, towards improvement is for someone to do sort of an inventory of what's on there and update it for the fall.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, and certainly not meant to be any sort of targeted thought about a specific individual. Just, and I agree with you. What we're talking about is an issue of capacity. If we're saying we want a, you know, state-of-the-art tool, that's something that we have to be willing to get behind.
Yeah.
And part of the reason, and that's why I bring it up in the context of the budget,
Yeah.
because that's going to require an investment to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think what we want to avoid is to say, well, it's October, the contract's up, we didn't put enough in the budget to do anything different, and so we're going to do it for another year, and then we're sort of caught in a cycle of not stepping back and investing in an upgrade. That you know, as you mentioned, we're reaching parents in new ways, and you know, taking advantage of that, I think, could lead into having a website that's more interactive, that's easier to maintain, that's putting the information in places where people feel most comfortable getting it, and with the capacity to change that information, because I know that's a limiting factor of websites, is that if you put information out that's helpful to people, the challenge is that changes the next day, and so you have to have an easy way to do that, and I know that requires an investment.
Yeah.
So that's part of why I bring it up now.
Yeah. What I would say, and I'll ask Mr. McHugh to keep me honest here. I mean, the website is a communication tool, and you know, over the course of last year, we did purchase and implement a new and much more effective communication tool in School Messenger. I think the feedback on that from both staff and families alike is overwhelmingly positive. But you know, your website is sort of your flagship of, you know, a repository for information, everything from what's for lunch to, you know, how do I get in contact with, or where do I grab forms for, or what have you. And given that it is a communication tool, I think, should we decide to make a change, we could leverage ESSER 2 funds for that.
Okay. And then the last thing I had was not something that I had that had come up recently. It wasn't something I submitted earlier. Just a request if there's any. I've gotten some questions about the compensation for athletic coaches and the sort of where that is, where that falls.
Yep.
A request to sort of see how we fall relative to other districts and what the sort of latest thinking there is in terms of making sure that we are where we want to be.
Yeah. Me or you?
Oh, I think I did some research, because that was one of the questions, and 2016, I believe, was the last time that we made an adjustment to those salaries. And what happened back then is they weren't equitable across the boards. And I use the example, and this is just an example, not so if you were the soccer coach at Classical, you might make a different amount than the soccer coach at English. So at that time, they had a committee get together of the athletic directors and Mike Geary, and they sat together and they put together an increase and kind of stabilized so they would be at least equal. The only sport that is allowed to do something differently is football, because some football coaches might want 11 staff, some might want 5 staff. So they have an allocation of funds, and they can actually change those based on the number of staff. So it has been some time, and it's been 5 years, so you know, it might be an opportunity to take a look at this again, and then also see what our neighboring districts are doing to see where our salaries stack up, like, you know, for Everett and, you know, all the surrounding towns, Swampscott and, you know, Salem and some of the cities around here, to see where we are, and then come back with a proposal to the committee to review if there's any recommendations to adjust either way from there.
Great. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to Member Ford, Member Satterwhite, then Member Castellanos.
I
And
just got
just a point on that, and just to follow up, I think, might be timely, too, to take a look at that. We've just recently gone into the Greater Boston League,
That's right.
the GBL, so it probably is timely to see how that reflects across the new, which is, I think, has been a great step for the schools. So it's probably a good opportunity as well to take a look at those salaries and what that means.
Yeah, quickly, I was just contacted by the coaches as well, and I know it was several years since they got any kind of an increase. I'd like to see it looked at as well.
Me too.
I just got one quick question about the SOA funding. Are we assured that this is perpetual and not quasi-grant funding that is gonna have, because, you know, I go back to the COPS grant. It was a 3-year grant, we hired the SROs, and in the 3 years, the money was gone, and we now had to find a way to incorporate those SROs into our budget. We're looking at 200 additions. You know, if this perpetual, you know, this SRO funding has a time limit on it, it'll cripple us.
So here's my understanding of the Student Opportunity Act. It's a 7-year commitment, and each year, there's supposed to be an increase on the previous year, right? My understanding is that it's not supposed to go backwards. In other words, in FY '22, it's an increase of, a little more than $14 million. And in, FY '23, there's some sort of reduction. My understanding is it starts where you left off the previous year. The increase may not be as much as the previous year, but my understanding is it does not go backwards.
But if it's a 7-year projection, what happens in the 8th year when all of these people are in the budget? Is there gonna be a funding issue?
Not unless they decide to start, reducing. It doesn't go backwards.
And I'll speak to that a little bit, I think, at least from a perspective from the legislature. If you look at the last, since ed reform, and even during the down times in '08, '09, and '10, there was the major commitment to at least keep local aid where it was and keep Chapter 70 at least level funding. Now, level funding is not what we like, obviously, but there was never an attempt, at least from my time in the legislature, to go back from where we were for the commitment from ed reform. Similarly, the Student Opportunity Act I will be similar. Again, if it's a level funding, it will be a hit, but it won't be it'll be a reduction based on a level funding, but it won't be an attempt to scale back those investment dollars. The number will be the same as the year before. So I just don't see how, when 7 years is finished, they're going to say, okay, we're not going to continue to fund that at that level. And I think, the effort would be, we were actually all meeting on the Fair Share Act the other day. I see Sheila nodding over there, to continue to make sure that funding for the kind of things that we're looking for, and education is at the top of that list in terms of what those dollars would mean. So again, there's no guarantee when the bottom falls out, the state has to look at dollars. But in '08, '09, and '10, really, when we were scaling back substantially in the budget, the most, I think, unanimous feeling among legislators was, let's keep local aid at that level. So.
So it'll reach a level and then just continue with that?
I don't know if I see Sheila pointing, and so you want to make one point, Sheila? Sheila O'Neill.
Yeah, so Sheila O'Neill, Lynn Teachers Union. The point of the SOA funding is that this 7 years is actually to make up for the 20
Right.
years, right? And once we get to the 7 years, they have changed the formula, so we are no longer going to be underfunded. That's what they're saying.
Right.
So we'll never, it'll still be level. Like the funding, that new funding formula is corrected so that we'll never be, working on, 1983's budget, formula in 2000 like we were. So that's the difference, and that's the change. And this 7 years is to actually make up for the 20 years.
Right.
Right?
That's a great point. So the commitment was made for those 7 years to increase the dollars to fund what had not been funded for communities like Lynn. So, I mean, it's a big step for Lynn. And it's a good, very valid question. But the reality is that that's incorporating, the dollars that are increases are incorporated in the ongoing, that's the budget. There isn't a cutback. And that is to get communities like Lynn. So it's a really valid question, but adding these positions is reflective of the commitment that the legislature and the governor have made to remedy what's been an unfair formula for years.
No, I think the positions are much needed. I totally agree with that. My concern was that, 7 years from now, do we fall off a cliff?
It's a different dynamic than the COPS grants in the 90s. That money was, you brought the COPS on. At some point, you were going to have to incorporate them into your budget without those dollars, but it gave you a period of years to then, build your budget to incorporate those. But in this budget, or the Student Opportunity Act, is to incorporate the new formula, and those dollars are a commitment to get us to where we should be, both over the 7 years and moving forward.
Thank you.
If that's helpful. Member Satterwhite, Member Castellanos, then Member Gately.
Thank you, Dr. Tutwiler, for the presentation. It's important to see where we're putting our money because it shows the areas that we care for. And I understand that some of the grant monies has restrictions and requirements, and that's why we're allocating funds towards those as well. I do want to start by saying I like that we're keeping Zoom. I think that it's a great tool, and when we had open house for ANEA, we were able to have all the teachers on the screen, and so they were able to kind of work off of each other and be on the same page, which was very important. So if one teacher might have said, she needs improvement with that, the other teacher can understand and really help out in their class as well. So it was a great collaboration, and I hope to see that more in the future. So thank you for the Zoom. And when it comes to technology, I wrote down, not too long ago, we had a virus, and it was detrimental to the school district. So when we went on remote learning and I was having these school devices connected to my personal internet, I was a little worried. So what I liked was the investment we put in prior to COVID and the staff that we brought in into IT and the mechanisms we put into place so it wouldn't happen again, to see that it worked. It's stuff like that I appreciate, and I see that in your thought process in this presentation. So in addition to that, School Messenger and Schoology is a heaven sent. I think that it helped ANEA out and other students tremendously, and made it very easy for the school to communicate with the family. So we were aware who was speaking in the class on Zoom. We were aware what was taking place at what particular point in time. This was more communication than we've had. And she's in the 7th grade going into the 8th grade, that entire time span. So it's tools like that we need to continue to have, and that's makes up for any type of inequities where we weren't able to reach particular parents and have input. So I appreciate that. I did have some questions with regards to the Welcome Center.
Sure.
We had an idea, so we planted a seed, and we wanted to see what that seed would grow into. And I love the fact that we're bringing the parent liaisons into the mix, because we spoke about the importance of them having really a bigger role in the ability for our district to communicate with families. So I appreciate the fact that you're adding the 16 parent liaisons, and that the goal was to get them in each school. Because it really was an inequity when we only had them in the middle schools. So for the fact that we're now expanding them and bringing them to other schools, it should continue that effort in our ability to communicate with caregivers as well as communities as a whole. So I'm assuming that was the strategy in this process. So I appreciate that. I do have a question about your statement about the technology teachers being brought into elementary school levels for the additional time for teachers. Is that separate and apart from what we did a couple of years ago with the early release?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it is separate and apart from that. It's part of the same agreement with the union. That's actually contractual. That has, it happened this year, and I think the circumstances of the year actually allowed for it to happen without the hire of those teachers. But next year, that's a requirement.
Originally, one of the things that we discussed was the physical education aspect of it, and bringing additional physical ed teachers into the district for SEL and other things. Is that still not a part of the plan?
So, I mean, we did add, I think it's 2 or 3 phys ed teachers, in addition to art and music teachers at the elementary level. This was more to satisfy specific needs for specific schools and not part of a district strategy. To be clear, the approach with the technology teachers is exclusively focused on giving those teachers that critical time to plan, prepare, do outreach, that, you know, they haven't had ever in this district. I mean, I think comparatively, you don't talk about looking at other districts, our elementary teachers had fewer preps in a week's time than.
They came with data each and every time, showing.
They
So
sure
yes,
did.
it was an inequity that we had in our district that we needed to address, and we did that when we had the early release.
Right.
I just want to make sure that is this a part of that, or is it in addition?
This is a part of that original conversation and agreement with the union, but I think there's a dual benefit here, right? I mean, you have an opportunity to dive deeper. I mean, students got a lot of experience with technology this year, but to have that as part of their academic experience at the elementary level around digital literacy, and, you know, the curriculum will be developed over the summer, I think is a wonderful addition for kids, and then you have the benefit of teachers then getting that additional prep.
And you know, what I liked, what you said earlier about adding the assistant directors for elementary focus and then secondary focus was elementary school is vital, and we spoke about it over the past 4 months about the EL population and what we need to do with regards to that. Today, you know, I heard a few really good positive things that, you know, stuck with me, which was, you know, at a young age you have to learn to love school, and then you love school. And that's you love it when it matters in high school. It always matters, but when the grades you present to colleges or whatnot come into play. So reaching these students and having that elementary focus, just like technology, is vital. One of the things that I heard, and I hope that our curriculum department understands, is I heard this today too, was a teacher's job is really to guide by the side. It was great to hear that, because the peer-to-peer and the group type thing is great. So I hope that there's that focus there with regards to the curriculum department and putting out certain things, because I like that we can focus a little bit more on each group of people, because it is vital. It's very different what you learn in elementary and from what you learn in secondary. So why is it that we're only dealing with mathematics and ELL and reading? Is this going to expand to other things?
It could. I mean, and I started with math and English because there are glaring gaps in terms of support and service at the secondary level in those 2 core content areas. The other one that comes to mind is science. But you know, we thought we would start here and see where things go. But science, I'd say the same rationale that I gave for those 2 positions exists for science. You've got one person who's responsible for identifying or developing curriculum, identifying or presenting professional development, coaching support, classroom observations, K-12, right? And if you think about even the difference just in high school alone, right? Biology, physics, chemistry, those are massively different sciences that require different licenses. And so you know, to think about a one person, you know, being positioned to support that meaningfully, and then also middle school, which is different from high school, and then also elementary, where the foci and the instructional practices are different. You know, it's a Herculean effort for one person to do. And when there are that many balls in the air, one of them is going to get dropped or not get tended to. It's just impossible to do it all extremely well. And we've had incredible people in these positions, but I think we can be smarter about how we're doing it.
And there's one last question. I'm sorry, two. We're talking about inclusion and equity in our district, and we're focusing on that. And you can hear that in the questions we're asking candidates. You can see that on the websites that we have and what we're putting out. And John brought up a very valid point with paying, and I believe Jarrett, the coaches a fair amount of money to do that work, and that there's no even review in such a long period of time. We do a lot of long-term or multi-year contracts for a lot of our vendors. But we lack that with the outside support systems, like a Tony Seaforth Academy, where he has to come to the school each and every year for a contract. Same with other ones that come into the schools. I don't believe that that's an equitable approach. You can't really prepare and kind of set forth a curriculum or whatever to really make a difference if you don't know if you're going to come back to next year. So I feel as though we have to be equitable across the board, and if we have a vendor and we have the ability to offer a long-term or a multi-year contract, it's something that we should do. Just so you can't hire someone and say, hey, I'm going to have you for a couple of years, as opposed to I'm going to have you for 1 year. That person's going to say, I'm going to go to another job. So it's important to understand that we're talking about bringing people of color, people that look like our students, and yet we're having a hard time hiring these educators in the classroom. But we have people that are willing to come in after school or even during school with these particular programs that look like our students, and they're not getting these this is no consistency. How is that healthy for our students? So I really hope that we take a look at that and incorporate that in our budget. So there is consistency, that there's equity, and that really, again, that shows that someone can rely on it. When I budget at home, my mindset is I need to know what's coming in order to budget. And that's the same for these people that are putting blood, sweat, and tear out there for our students to succeed. And you see the numbers that without sports, it had a detrimental impact on our students, but not just because of sports, but because they didn't have that other component. So those are things that we have to look at in our budget as well. So I know that I didn't see much with adding additional line items for recruiting people of color. I know it's hard. I talked to the vice principals and principals, and it's very difficult. But we still need to allocate funds there, and we still need to support the systems that bring these people that we need to interact with our students back. Okay, thank you.
Member Castellanos? And then Member Gately.
Thank you, Dr. Tutwiler, Kevin. Always, every year, I get to see this budget, and it's very well put together, comprehensive, and it's very clear to navigate, as we look at every line item. There's very valuable questions that my colleagues all presented. I did I did share when I reviewed athletics, and I did. You hear from coaches, and over the years you start to hear, the concerns, and I do think we need to develop an equitable approach as we go in the GBL, review, analyze, see what we could do. Being on the athletic subcommittee, I look forward to doing the work and to really learning more about what we can do to support our staff, and just overall, the coaches are extremely valuable in this district. As a student athlete myself, a lot of those coaches go beyond their pay. They don't really do it for the money. They volunteer a lot of their times, youth sports, high school, and they really deter a lot of kids from the school to prison pipeline. They don't get enough credit. So I just want to give a real, big thank you to all of them out there watching, and to know that we are caring about their concerns, and definitely respect that. So my next question and comment is around the nursing services and what we're proposing. I know during the pandemic, I know we had some struggles with hiring nurses, and as we are transitioning into a fully in-person, for a whole year of going back to that routine, are we at a safe, secure staffing level? I see that we didn't add much. What exactly, so are we at a safe, secure staff level? What's the state requiring us, and do we need to invest? Is that something in our forecast, like as a district that just went through 15, 16, 17 months of a pandemic?
Yeah.
Are we prepared?
Yeah. So, I mean, my knee-jerk response to that is yes, and I would say that response is anchored in part to the context, right? The context is better. Vaccines are up, cases are down. It's safer, right? I mean, we're all sitting here, in close proximity with no masks, and so ready from the standpoint of the context. It was a challenge finding nurses to fill the vacancies during the year, big challenge, and I think that was felt by every school district who had vacancies to fill. And so I don't think there was a request that the nursing department made of us that we didn't accommodate or try really hard to accommodate, and that includes through the budget conversation. So what you see in the budget for next year is the increase. I mean, there's still the positions at every school, which we're working to fill, but then also nursing assistants, which are, I'm just going to use the director's language here, gold. She said they are amazing. I mean, they help with screenings, they help with the administrative work that allow the nurses to focus on other things. And so I think I can say pretty confidently that we are ready for next year based on the additional support that we've added with the nursing assistants, the context of being full in person 5 days a week. Desi says no masks for next year as well. So I think we're ready.
And I also want to give the Lynn Community Health Center as a partnership. Definitely, that's another resource. I would not like to. I need to mention them too because they are a vital partner to our public health. The city as well, the city on that side. It's been it's an operation for sure, and getting back into that normalcy. It's very important that we make sure we have that.
Can I just say something that really quickly? Because, I mean, we really consider them family, Lynn Community Health. We meet with them monthly. We met with them monthly through the entire pandemic, just to coordinate and align services for kids, whether it's physical health stuff, behavioral health stuff. I mean, we wanted to make sure that they had access to students and families, whether it's through us or with our support. We've set up some stuff over the summer where they have access to buildings and can provide supports for families. So big partner of ours, family.
I appreciate that. And so I also want to highlight a piece of the budget that kind of stood out to me around security. So, and as as a new role, I'm a regional missing or absent social worker and investigator. It's been a new role that I took on and embraced about 5 months ago, and I've been able to work in multidisciplinary teams across the state, also nationally, and I get to work on issues pertaining to internet crimes against children, also child trafficking, and also probably the worst child abuse you could ever imagine that we don't highlight enough. There's vulnerabilities across the nation when it comes to internet safety, and when it comes to urban districts like ourselves who never had that type of tech access before. Last year, we approved technologies across the district. Many students who've never had internet and laptops were gifted with these opportunities to have that access. And the digital world it's remarkable. There's lots of value and tools, and there's a reason to why we did it. but there's also the security component. There's the digital cleanse that every generation we're going to see pitfalls. We're living in one right now. Like just when cigarettes back in the day, folks didn't understand the health issues there. We're seeing some real significant issues across the board with internet usage. And when I look at cybersecurity, prevention, and just enhanced partnerships that we could be part of, I'd like to see what the thought is around, how we invest in moving forward, again, with the population of kids that we've had. As you look at why we have the increased social workers and the increase in those type of personnel, you got to understand that the student population that we're targeting, they might not have the parents at home to monitor their social media. They might not have, when you're interacting gaming, there's people out there, unfortunately, grooming our kids. It's a $36 billion industry, the sex trafficking industry, just to put that out there. It's number 2 on the black market. Number 1 is the drug trade. Number 2 is the sex trafficking trade. And number 3 is the gun trade. And it's something that I'm seeing as a member of the Commonwealth and the victims that I work with and see. There's no area code that this does not affect. And this is hitting us right now at this moment, and I think it's important to highlight that as we're coming into our in-person routines, and that doesn't get shoveled under the rug. So I just please, and again, I know, we're all coming back when we go through the budget, everyone has a different perspective. That's something that I see as very vital, and development is important to build that infrastructure to enhance student safety. Because not just physical, the internet space is very, 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 very unsafe at these times.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a polished presentation with respect to what a district or what a family should do, but I'll tell you what I know about it, which is, you can set up, all of our devices are managed, meaning we have the ability to update them, all of them, in students' homes from here, and we also have the ability to stop them from going certain places from here. And so, we've got the additional monitoring piece that, if there was a student expressed suicidal ideation on Twitter or something like, it would flag it, and Oren gets a notification, and school principal, and we can address that. But you can have all of those set up. You can have, all of these robust features to sort of address those issues, but nothing trumps relationships. You want to know the number one thing to stop a student from making a bad decision online, or stop a student from, going to meet somebody they met, or what. It's the relationships that they have, and that's really what we focused on wholeheartedly this year as part of the attendance initiative, even going back to last March. I mean, if you recall, the agreement that we had with the union was meaningful outreach, meaningful connection, at least twice per week. And it had to be on the phone because that's all we had. But build relationships, stay connected, because when there's a relationship, that's, students will tell you if there's a problem. They'll tell you. You'll have a sense for what's going on. And so I don't know that anyone will ever shake that belief that is the core mitigation strategy for those kinds of things.
No, I think that's very valuable when we talk about relationships and outreach. It's definitely been something that I see with the district. Teachers, social work, you see something, you say something. And that's something that, when we look at prevention, instead of being reactive, I believe in prevention. And it really, staying informed is a process. There's multiple levels of how we get informed. And in terms of this particular issue, I'm highly trained in it, clinically. I've seen the best training in the world, and part of my role today to highlight is the partnerships that are out there, and one of those partnerships that we're not affiliated with is the Massachusetts Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. They prevent education. Again, this is, the Lynn PD also is not an affiliate, but I believe as a school committee member and an advocate for children, I believe it's our obligation to partner up with the best. And I think the Massachusetts State Police, I've been able to work with them on many different occasions on initiatives. They have a task force that has a K through 12 just resource pool that I love to look at. That's how, when I deal with constituents, parents, students, I get to share resources from the ICAC. It's a national organization that's recognized, and the Mass State Police, they're always looking to partner up. There's also other partners, but I just feel like it's just something that I've seen enhance my perspective, because this is very, again, a new, if we're looking at how we're prepared, there's 17,000 students. It's a lot of students. It's hard, and some of those students don't have relationships, and the mental health is definitely impacting that. And that's, I see it all day when you got kids in the school to prison pipeline. Our CRA kids, our care and protection kids, and they might not have that, and they might have an outlet like gaming that present risk, and school might not be the outlet, but that's just something that, as Michael said, excuse me, Attorney Satterwhite, we gotta, we want to guide them to love school and to love and to feel that safety and secure net, and to understand how to be informed and to know that they might be seeking the wrong path. So I appreciate that. You hit a chord with me. And I think my last comment is around, it's kind of what Member Ford suggested. I just wanted to add, and the SOA, the Student Opportunity Act, as a member of the school committee, I've taken, whenever I had a chance to advocate, I think it's been amazing what the legislature and everyone, all the work that everyone here has done. The city of Lynn, the leadership. We got my President Sheila O'Neill, who has organized and allowed everyone to hear the voices of teachers and students and the families and everyone that's been, that felt the neglect. And it's been amazing to see the sustainability involved in that adjustment, to see that after 7 years. Because when I look at staff, and immediately, if you don't have a sustainability plan, you look at all those the staff hires, and if we don't have a mechanism in place, then we get back to square one if that adjustment never made. But I'm so grateful for the folks involved to really see the value in education. Education is so important. It's been an important feature of my life, and it's something in those kids in those classrooms, and that's gonna take kids to far places. And I have I always say I'm just a kid from Lynn. I'm just a kid from Lynn, and as an example of a first generation low income kid who struggled, education was my ticket, and it's so amazing what the work that our staff and folks around here who invest their time into helping us. And I'm just grateful for the Student Opportunity Act, just what you've budget. It's reflective of what you've standed by. From my first time coming in here, working on the district-wide strategic plan, we talked about we needed supports in SEL, and now it's coming to fruition. And it's amazing what the power of collaboration, and it's just when there's a need, we always look to problem solve, and I'm very grateful to be around all of you. And that's my remarks for tonight. And I told Attorney McCopolis that we'll be out by midnight, so that's it.
Gately?
I don't know. It might be later than that, Attorney. Okay, and under my questions on the curriculum for technology, when will that be presented to the curriculum committee?
The technology curriculum?
Yeah, technology.
So Shannon Bansfield will be bringing those teachers together over the summer, so we'd have to present it.
In the fall?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's question one. Okay, compliance, could you explain the rationale for the increase for translation services.
Want me to take that?
Or
Or Kevin?
Kevin, yeah, you or Kevin.
You got it? So Charlie Gallo and I have had a number of conversations around translation. It was underfunded to begin with.
Okay.
And so, I mean, schools were using like our ROTC students and parent liaisons to translate during parent conferences, and technically that shouldn't happen because they're not trained interpreters.
But what about Google Translate?
So you use that in an emergency. We have, what is it called? Lion Bridge, which is a translation company that we use for translations. They can provide translators and they can do phone translation. So the schools have been using that all this year for the communication. Now, do they use Google Translate in an emergency? Yes. But we really needed to formalize how we translate for our families because it needs to be the right caliber translation.
So this is like a $208,000
Yeah,
increase.
translation is very expensive. We're hoping, Kim and I have talked about this with Charlie, we're hoping to, at some point, develop our parent liaison, like do a training that our parent liaisons can be part of to become translators, like certified translators. We had three
go
participate with a Department of Education program and got the certification. And so we're hoping to develop that, but, that's down the road. We have
And
to
it's
do.
extensive training.
Yeah, it's pretty involved.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, translation is very expensive.
I mean, we can't emphasize enough how that was not funded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many assistant curriculum directors do we have in Lynn Public Schools? 13, 12?
I believe it's 13.
13. So when I'm out and about, I hear how top-heavy our district is. I hear that a lot. There's a lot of people up top. And so now you're asking us to approve another ELA assistant curriculum director and another assistant director of curriculum for math. So somewhere down the line, are we going to be doing like we did before? We used to just have 4, and it was, they did secondary or elementary. I don't know if I can go along with this because of that rationale. In science, I think that assistant director of curriculum and mathematics for K through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, you definitely need that for science. Like when Rick Held came in and took over for the science, he brought in his knowledge from K through 5, and then they actually, the problem with science on the MCAS at that point was they weren't getting any curriculum. So when they came to secondary, to middle schools, to me, they had no prior knowledge in science. So I would have to teach them everything from K through 8 to help them pass that test. So, so I'm a little confused that if we do this for the ELA and the math, then why shouldn't we do it for science or social studies, or all 12 of them? That's,
Well, I don't think it's needed for all
and then the other thing is, I am hearing that we're too top-heavy. And like, what about jobs in Lynn? The people in my community want more jobs going to Lynn people, working in the upper administration. And that's what they're expressing to me. They want Lynn people in these jobs so that they're taking a check home to Lynn, the community. I'm just the messenger. You've asked
happy
me,
to-
you're
go ahead.
asking me
Sorry.
to approve this in a budget where we're going to take one assistant director of ELA and one assistant director of math, and we are going to double them. And we have 12 to 13 assistant curriculum directors. And that's going to cost a lot of money in the end if we have 13 elementary, secondary. So I think you need to think this over a little bit more. And then I also want to talk about the ESSA funds. And I really foresee some real issues.
I think that Dr. Tutwiler would like to speak to the first question, and then you can get into the
Yeah, just quickly. So one of the slides in the presentation showed a pie chart for this budget proposal,
Yep.
which essentially has 97% of the positions that we're proposing in this budget being direct service, non-leadership
Yep.
positions, 97%. And also, if you recall, 2 years ago, I think you were there, I was there, Member Capola, Kevin, we went to that, it's actually a Student Opportunity Act event in Malden. Where they did the Tale of Four Cities. You'll recall from that, and I'm happy to reshare that with you, that the data or the projections from the state, we actually underspend by $1.7 million in leadership. We are nowhere near being top-heavy. We woefully underspend in leadership. I think this budget reflects a very tiny increase in leadership. What we're proposing is 2 positions for core content areas in curriculum. I mean, there's English, math, science, social studies, and history. All I'm proposing is English and math. I think you're right. I think there's a place for science, for that conversation to be had. But we started with the core content areas because, frankly, again, going back to the presentation, there are areas that aren't being serviced, and that is abundant. I mean, I welcome you to talk to your high school and middle school folks and ask them how much, how much interaction they have with the math and ELA curriculum folks. It's not a lot. It's actually more the assistant director for humanities, and ELA is not even in her job description. And so she's been volunteering her time doing what she can. Mind you, she also has early college, world language, and early college. So I respect your suggestion to think about it more. I'll tell you in response, we've thought about this a lot. I noticed this when I got here as a deputy superintendent, that was a glaring weakness and gap in this district, and we're trying to correct it in this budget. We have not in previous budgets. I mean, we've prioritized direct service to kids, whether it's in special ed, English learner education, but now we have the opportunity to fix this, and that's why I proposed it.
Okay. So someday maybe science, because that.
I will
We've
propose
already
it.
talked about that.
Yeah.
We have. We've already
Science
talked
is
about
like,
that.
it's a lot of work in science.
Sure.
And I think blended learning will help with that. I really do. Okay, but now I'm foreseeing a real issue with students coming back that are going to need extra help. And I don't see anywhere in this budget a real after-school tutorial program like Tony's. He really helped the athletes, and I think it should be a model for the whole district, personally, because those students are successful. Those students succeeded. I don't know what the issue is, but I really want him to be addressed in this budget, and I want piggyback on Attorney Satterwhite that maybe we need to think, putting something in our budget so that he is a part of the City of Lynn Public Schools, and able to set it up during the day and have everything ready, because it is not part-time. It's like a full-time job to get this done. So I don't see it there. So for me to see, we're going to increase in curriculum and not really think about the needs of our students that are coming back, that are going to be probably behind, that are going to need those supports after school, especially on the middle and high school. They're going to need those supports.
Yeah. So I would say that this budget forcefully responds to the needs of the students for next year when there's almost 200 positions that are dedicated to direct service for them next year. A lot of it is during the day. In my superintendent's report, I'm going to talk about 2 community, what is it called? Hold on one second. the CCLC grants, the Century Community Learning Center grant that we were recently received. One in the amount of 200 grand, another in the amount of about 190 grand, all for after-school programming. But I think you said this in the beginning of your comments around ESSER. I mean, that's what that is supposed to do. And as Member Nicholson asked earlier, like, what's the process going to look like to identify how these funds are going to be spent? I think we need to, engage that process, listen to the community. When kids come back, I think we need to understand what their needs are rather than to start throwing, different programs at them. Let's understand where the needs are and build accordingly. And last thing I'll say is, programs like Tony Seaforth's programs would easily qualify under the ESSER grant. So that's something that we would happily support. The multi-year piece, Kevin will have to speak to that. I don't know that that's possible.
Can I just address? But why would you want to wait until September? Because if they come in September, the kids are going to be starting to fall behind right away. If it's there, like a safety net, like, oh, you don't understand your physics, so you're going to have after-school help right away.
I think you misunderstood me. I didn't say there's nothing. I just said if we're going to start building responsive after-school programs, we best have a strong sense for what the needs are. And I think we'll better, I would rather get kids back, assess, and then build. I mean, there are all sorts of after-school programs that'll begin immediately when the school year starts. But if we're talking about responsive programs, then that's something I'd want to, be really intentional about and thoughtful about.
Can I just, Kim and I, when we do the titles application, there are programs for after-school support at the high school level, at the middle school level, at the elementary level, like, those are built in, and we start that, we're starting that process now with meeting with the private schools, but then we will jump, she and I will jump right in with planning for how our titles funding will be used, and I guarantee you
That will be ready for September.
That will be ready for September, and there will be after-school opportunities for kids.
Thank you.
Kevin was going to respond.
And as far as the contract, if you're going to do a multi-year contract, actually what you're doing is you're getting a fixed price for 3 years. So it's 3 one-year contracts. Every year, we sign new contracts with our vendors based on, if you go out for a request for proposal for services, and you have to go out and you can get a 3-year quote, because you just can't go to one company and say, just how much is it going to cost me for 3 years, and you got the deal. So we got to follow the procurement laws at that point. Once we get that, so we do have vendors that we may have a 3-year contract. So, for example, I use my copy machines. My copy machines are 3-year leases, but they're 3 one-year leases with every year there's a price. And the same with our transportation. So if we get the transportation to our vendor, it's a 3-year contract, but every year there's an actual price, so you don't renegotiate every year. Otherwise, you could do a 1-year contract and then renegotiate every year. So if you want to go that, you can go that route, but it would be like, okay, give us your quote, and we get other quotes, and then whoever the lowest price was, based on the criteria, would get the award, and there would be, you'd have your fixed price for those 3 years. So
Okay.
hopefully that answers the question.
Hopefully we can do that for Tony.
Thank you. Member Capola?
Yes. Okay, my concern is kind of on the same line as Lorraine in regards to the 2 assistant directors. Only because the answer that we're given is that this vision is being driven, by data. With respect to MCAS, we continue to lag behind the state in both ELL mathematics. Our scores are especially concerning in secondary, more specifically, scale scores and student growth in our most marginalized students, specifically below the state. And then internal assessment also shows students are performing below grade level. So as I look at each one of the schools, most of the elementary, or a good many of them, do not have a math teacher within the schools. So that's a concern to me. We're adding on some reading this time within those, but You know, I think with the size of classrooms we have, that I think that the teachers need that piece of that extra math teachers within the school. I mean, we, you know, just in looking at it, I mean, Brickett has no math, no reading teacher. Avon, no math. Callahan, no math. Corbett, no math. Fallon's just getting a half and one now. Ford has no math there. Hood, Ingalls, I mean, it's hard to believe that we have that many that don't have. And I understand that we're adding some in the secondary, but you figure, you know, just the amount of students that we have in those schools, you know, close to 10,000 in our secondary. And we've only added on, I think, 5 positions in that. You know, 5, you know, like as far as an extra math positions in that. If I'm reading it right, we've added 1 for Breed, 2 for Thurgood, 1 for Classical, 1 for English. The others Pickering and Tech don't. So we're only adding 5 math. How, I mean, we're talking direct services right within the classrooms. You know, I mean, the kids aren't gonna get it, and you're not gonna improve if we don't beef up that extra support and assist the teachers as far as, you know, helping with bringing the math along. Some places have, you know, we'll say maybe a math teacher, but then some will say CIT math. So what would be the difference with if a math teacher is there or a CIT math person?
The difference in that is that a math teacher would provide direct services to student.
Mm-hmm.
A math CIT would do coaching with teachers.
Okay.
That's the distinction.
Okay.
Do you want to explain the math teachers in some and not others?
I mean, it's basically a request by the principal in terms of how they set up their organization. You have very few dedicated math teachers at the elementary level. And the other thing you'll find is you don't have elementary people certified in math. Your certified math teachers are at your middle schools and your high schools. Your elementary, it's elementary level certifications. It's very rare to find an elementary teacher with a math cert.
Okay, but it just seems like, I don't know, maybe I'm simplifying it, but it just doesn't seem that if the students are weak in those subjects, why there isn't some kind of extra support, which is a direct service. I mean, I think, you know, we always talk about the budget is built from the bottom up, just what they need as far as direct services in a classroom. And those 2 things, I mean, we're not performing well on. And so if we're not, I think we should think about putting extra staff in there, even if they're extra staff teachers that are just going in, you know, if they're elementary certified, they obviously can teach math.
Yes, they can.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so, you know, if there's an extra, if there are extras, I don't know, but I think, I just don't see how we're ever gonna change it if we do not give that extra support in the math and reading in the elementary. That I just don't see.
I think,
We do have the math coaches. The district coaches that go into the schools at the elementary level. The math positions you're talking about at the secondary level are based on enrollment. That is for math classes. They need those teachers because their enrollment has gone up.
Right.
And in order to have a math class for those students, you need those teachers. But, you know, we do have that extra support. I think what the assistant director position does by splitting it, they do more curriculum work and, you know, lesson development work with teachers down here. Like they build maps and with blended learning, they'll probably be doing a lot of the tutorial videos that teachers will use within their lessons, things like that. So that takes a lot of time. Like we're doing blended learning work now. It takes a lot of time. We have lots of teachers who are working with us down here from the schools with our assistant directors on that blended learning work. It takes a lot of time. to
But
do
we've
that.
had for a long time, you know, the CITs, the coaches, and it's not changing. So, you know, that doesn't seem to be what's working.
Well, I think when you think about the ask for the extra, for the additional assistant directors, I think you have to think about it in two buckets. I think you have to think about it in content and capacity. You know, let's take ELA. Traditionally, our ELA assistant director has been somebody at the elementary level, and their primary skill set is in early literacy. And that's what we have right now in Mrs. Winslow. We have somebody who's historically been, although she taught at the middle school level, her certifications, primarily in her experience, are at the elementary level. They're in reading, they're in early literacy. And what we've done to compensate for that, because it's a huge task to lead an entire content in this big a district, is we've drawn on the expertise of Shannon Gardner, who was at the secondary level, who was an English teacher, right? Because Mrs. Winslow doesn't carry that content all the way from pre-K all the way up to grade 12. So that's just in the person's own content knowledge. And then there's this whole capacity issue around their role of coaching and support. In a single content area for one person to provide that level of support at all grade levels is just too enormous a task.
Okay,
You know, I
so,
think you
so
have the
how do we get
capacity.
it back down there for these kids who are not meeting, you know, they're below grade level, without giving them the extra inside this classroom of these specific things?
I think it's about the district systems we have in place to support that, whether it's the curriculum that we develop, the level of coaching that we provide to teachers, the type of PD, and the assistant directors are responsible for creating that and leading that. And when you have one person, I don't think you get the product you want. I really don't.
Well, I'm sure when we go home, all our phones will be ringing, telling us. It will be every teacher explaining the weakness in, you know, what it is in those classrooms that is, you know, it needs to be. But it just, to me, just seems as though if there's a weakness for the kids and they're below grade level, and these are the subjects that they're below in, why the principals wouldn't have asked for that in their schools. That's all. I mean, you probably don't have an answer for that. you
Well,
know,
what I
so-
would say is, I think the good news is that we all want the same thing, right? We all want students to progress and learn and grow, and principals are, you know, they make decisions in their budget process based on what they think is going to make that happen in their building. And the good news with this budget, because there's an increase as substantial as there was, is that we were able to accommodate just about every request that principals made. And so what you see in that budget proposal is reflective of, you know, the robust process in developing the Student Opportunity Act plan, lots of communities' fingerprints on that. Sheila and I worked closely. We went building to building. I mean, that's reflected in this. There's a lot of teacher input in this proposal, a ton. I wish, you know, she could join and speak to that, but there's a ton. And then, you know, in refining the process and preparing what you have before you, the principals come and they share based on data, based on their knowledge of the building, based on their experience observing classrooms, what they think is going to move the needle. And that's reflected in that budget. So, I mean, if you hear different things from teachers about what the classroom needs, I'd actually recommend that you have them contact me. I will happily listen to that. I think they'll find that many of the things they're looking for are actually supported in this budget. But you know, I just go back to the tie that binds, which is we all want to see kids grow. None of us is going to make a recommendation in a budget or in any proposal that, you know, goes in the opposite direction of that.
Okay, so what they picked should show us a difference when the spring comes. We
I
should
don't-
definitely see a difference.
I don't think it's that simple, and it's especially after the kind of year that we had this year. Well, I'll tell you, the last accountability conversation that we had in this space was pretty good, right? So maybe the needle is moving, but I'll tell you, after last year, I mean, it's anyone's guess as to what we're going to see in terms of student outcomes for next year. All we can do is apply our best thinking, put our hearts on the table, and do our best work with kids based on what we know, and that's reflected in the budget.
Okay. One of the questions I had sent in, but I didn't see an answer to it, was in regards to the athletics. It had to do with the uniforms and the supplies and equipment. That, I know one of the lines we increased by 10,000. Did I miss it, Kevin? Because I did ask
I may not
that.
have wrote that one down. I know we talked about when you called in. You know, Mike Geary meets every year with the athletic directors and they all take the input from their coaches and staff and put the budget together, and they order the equipment, you know, as a uniform, and we actually put it all out to bid as one big bid over the summer. So he's already had those meetings with his athletic directors, and they put together how many dozens of baseballs and how many in uniforms. We try to, I know we used to do it, and I told him to do the same thing, that we buy uniforms like on a 4 or 5 year cycle. So we buy like football uniforms, I think is gonna be next year's purchase. Then might be baseball or girls softball and baseball together, and cheerleading, and they kind of use a cycle to buy, so that every year we have so we can rotate it through on a 5 year cycle.
Do you think that one thing I had asked you, if you could look back and see, when's the last time we had actually increased those lines? Is that an increase of every year?
I can double check them. It depends on what he requests in his budget, if he's requested. One year we did not do it because I think it was last year when we were pretty tight, but he did come in with a budget request last year. We did not do it, but this year.
And it depends on which sport, because football uniforms are very expensive because you've got all that equipment, whereas baseball and softball is not necessarily as expensive. So that might be the difference in the amount as well.
And what I heard is from like the junior varsity baseball parents, you know, their uniforms don't even match. We're sending them out representing us, and it would be nice to have them at least be uniform and look nice when they got onto a field. And it's, the shades are not the same. Some of them are just, you know, stains that parents just can't get out of them. And so that's why I'm just asking, are we giving them a sufficient budget so that we don't send our kids out on fields looking like that? And there are parents that are embarrassed and disappointed with it. So just if, you know, we know if we've increased it, if we haven't increased it, maybe we should look at that and show some pride for our kids and send them out looking nice on the fields.
Okay, I'll follow up with that for the
Thank
next
you.
meeting.
Member Satterwhite?
Just the discussion brought additional questions to my mind, that just 2 additional ones. And it's forward thinking. So one of the things that's taken place is that we're in search of a new nursing director, which was a question.
A new what?
Director of nursing in our district. And one of the questions Member Castellanos asked was, what were we doing with regards to our nurses in our schools? This is the top dog of the nursing. So where are we with the hiring, and is there a long period of time that the current nurse will stay to train that particular person, especially after COVID, and what's going to be happening next school year?
Yeah, so I mean, the good news is that retirement happens in the summer, right? When it's, you know, quote unquote, the quietest time of the year, and a good time to show someone the ropes, so to speak. I believe that posting closes next week, at which point we will assemble a committee and go through that process.
And so the process will be expedite it like we have been with the other ones that we're talking about because of the importance. Is that correct?
I will move, I mean, first, I need to look at the candidate pool and see what's come in, and we'll make a decision as to what the next step looks like from there.
But we understand that the transition part is
key.
obviously, is
Yeah,
key. Okay.
sure.
The second question was,
One, if I may, there is a very talented assistant director of nursing
Yes, she's
in
wonderful.
that department.
Yes.
So, who's been working very closely with the director. I mean, they sit this far apart from what, well, this part during COVID. Now they're like this. Who can support a new director?
she's wonderful, yes, yes. And then Lorraine, Ms. Gately brought up the translation service, and your response was, so I'm a lawyer, and I practice in both federal court and obviously district court, and George will attest to this. Translators are very hard to come by, and you're delayed substantially in court when you have a client that speaks Spanish. You can't do the translation for them. It has to be someone that is certified. So we have to keep that in mind, that when we're going to be offering these certifications to our parent liaisons, there are going to be better opportunities for them outside the district that they can go to that are high sought after. So that is something that we have to keep in mind
Correct.
when we're doing that. So
Correct.
it's a vital component that we need in our district, and we want to keep these people here. So keep that in mind when we're talking about those things. And the translation services that you addressed are the ones that the bankruptcy court uses, where they call in, someone gives you the badge, and they do the translation. It's a great service, but we also need to have that personal
Yeah, we want
component
the
to it.
people.
Yeah.
We do want the people.
So it's needed. It is a compliance issue, and so
Yeah.
I support,
We legally
obviously.
need to
Yeah.
do it.
And I just wanted to put that out there with just the court system. There are other different industries that also have translation services.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you all for the discussion. We'll be dealing with the public hearing in 2 weeks. Next on the agenda is signing of contracts.
I do have a question.
Member Satterwhite?
There's a third person on here for a contract signing that the one for the executive director, isn't that a new position?
It is a new position.
So what contract did we use for that one?
The exact same one as all the other executive directors. It's exactly the same, except for the compensation.
It's, you know, as the director of, as the chairperson of the negotiation subcommittee, this is something that was a surprise that there was no real discussion. I understand that you're using the same, but it's a new position, and it just would have been good to have some type of communication that, hey, we're going to use the same contract, and we're going to put it on the agenda. It's just a surprise.
Respectfully, I don't know why it's surprising. It's all the executive directors have the exact same contract. The only difference is the actual compensation. The position was posted. It had a range of salary. It's a position that the superintendent hires. So the contract is the same with a recommendation for salary. I'm not sure what process that I was supposed to engage.
I think we just usually are able to review it, just as we did, the others. We at least look at that contract.
We did it with
It's
all of
on
them.
executive session this evening.
Okay, but all we're doing is signing it with no time to look at it. That's what I thought you were saying. It's not in an executive session, it's just signing of contracts here.
That-
Two we already
That's to be included
discussed,
in
one we never really looked at. If we could just look at it and
Certainly.
sign it on
I
the
mean, we can
next
push it
meeting
off
or
to next
something,
week.
but-
It's no problem, if you want to take time to look at it.
I'll entertain a motion to push off the signing of the contract for Director of Human Resources to next meeting, which will be next Thursday.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We'll take that as a roll call.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. In terms of the other two contracts, we did negotiate them in executive session, that's all, and we brought it out in an open session before. We are at this point to just sign the contracts, and if the contract's available to be signed.
Who has the contract?
Who has the
I
contracts?
emailed them.
So we sign,
Left the folders over by you, Mr.
okay, that's right, okay.
I make a motion
I
to,
actually have the folders right here.
make a motion to sign the contract for Deputy Superintendent Deb Ruggiero and the Secretary of the School Committee, Mary Jules.
Second.
Second, we'll take a roll call on that again, and then we'll pass along the contracts. I do have them.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
Okay, pen ready? Nice, nice.
Much better than Dalton.
Did you get it, Donna?
Much better.
You have to click the button.
Okay, I'll be fast.
First contract is the contract for Mary Jules.
Are we signing multiple ones?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
It's the last Thursday. Yeah. And then the week after that is the budget. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was a general one.
I mean, there might be some
That done, I'll pass around the second.
Yeah.
agenda,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
This is when we miss John.
Mm.
I know. I miss John.
Is this all of them?
That's it?
Is it three?
That's three.
Okay. Should we give them to Mary to sign? Congratulations again, Mary.
Next is the contract for Deputy Superintendent. We'll pass those three contracts along as well. And I'll pass the folder along
Okay,
as well.
sure.
I'll hang on to these.
Is that three? Oh, no.
Two. That's two. I'll bring it over. Why isn't it?
Give these to Deb to sign too?
Yes.
Careful. Oh, it's on that wire. Watch, be careful with the pile, Lorraine. I know. Lorraine, that wire. Almost gonna die. So say, I'll save you.
Saving money for the district. It's like the chairs.
I'll make the motion to go into executive session whenever you're ready.
Legs are all scratched up.
So we're ready to convene an executive session. Member Satterwhite, would you like to make a motion to reflect the full explanation of why we're going into executive session?
Sure. I'd like to request to go into executive session to discuss strategies with respect to collective bargaining relative to the Administrative Association, Nurses Local 3147-A, and Local 1736 contracts. The discussion of these matters, which involve strategies in an open meeting, may have a detrimental effect on and compromise the bargaining positions of the public body.
Second.
There's a second. That requires a roll call.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
I didn't think you could go.
Following the executive session, the school committee will reconvene in open session at the end of executive session. Turn to regular session.
Second.
Motion to return to regular session?
Second.
There's a motion and made and seconded. Roll call, please.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
But just not this.
So what do you want me to do? Make a motion?
So as we're back in session, we return after taking action on two, and roll calls on two contracts, one related to the Administrators Association, the other Nurses Local 3147. No action was taken on Local 1736 contracts.
Okay, so
And now that we're in session, would motion to ratify those votes. Is there a motion? Member Gately?
make a motion to ratification of votes if taken in executive session relative to collective bargaining with the Administrators Association, Nurse Local 3147A, and Local,
We didn't do that one.
oh, forget that one, and Locals, Nurses Local 3147A.
There's a motion to take that up in a second.
Second.
Second requires a roll call.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Partially, yes. I abstained from the
Are we
nurses.
are we doing one, are we doing one, are we doing the nurses? Was that the motion?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, we're doing one,
we're just doing the nurses.
and then we'll take the next one up in the
Okay.
second vote. So you can,
So that was just for the nurses local?
Correct.
Okay, and I'll make a motion to ratify the votes taken.
you
in-
abstained on that, correct?
Correct.
And,
And Mayor
and
McGee?
yes. So the roll call's finished. Now we'll go to the second vote.
Motion to ratify the votes taken in executive session relative to collective bargaining with the Administrative Association, which was the changes to the summer work and adding additional PD days.
Motion made.
Second.
There's a second. Requires a roll call.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes. That is the last thing on the agenda. Dr. Tutwiler, is your superintendent's report?
Sure, I'll do one more for the remainder, or for the end of the school year, last one of the school year. Since the last superintendent's report, we've received news of several grant awards that will support our efforts to meet student needs next year. We received 2 Massachusetts 21st Century Community Learning Centers grants We received $200,000 to support the LEAP program expansion at Marshall Middle School. The second, in the amount of $197,000, was awarded to our partner Campfire to open an after-school program similar to the existing one on which we partner currently at Washington STEM. Last week, we also got notice of a $208,000 grant to support culturally responsive literacy in the district under the DESE Glowing Literacy Across Massachusetts initiative. GLEAM grants will support districts in implementing deep and lasting improvements in programming in ELA and literacy through a multi-tiered system of support. Finally, Lynn Tech is on the receiving end of a career technical education partnership implementation grant. It's a lot. In the amount of $167,000. These funds will be used to restart our After Dark initiative that was paused due to challenges related to the pandemic. In addition to the competitive grants that we've successfully attained, there's a non-competitive federal grant, the third installment of the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. The amount the district is expected to receive, a little more than $42 million, was released months ago, but only recently were we provided information on how the funds can be spent, as well as the expectations for developing a plan. In short, ESSER 3 funds can be used to meet student needs in the realms of academics and mental health. Funds can also be allocated for operations. In total, 20% of the grant amount must be allocated to activities or strategy to address learning loss. Plans must be submitted by October, and funds must be spent by September of 2024. There's a robust expectation, as we were talking about earlier, for stakeholder input in the development of the plan, a requirement that we both appreciate and respect. The stakeholder input process will be developed during the summer months in partnership with the mayor's office. Much more to come on this important opportunity. Following up on my March 25th report, the process to adopt a new high school English language arts curriculum. By way of brief update, a representative team from each school and English learner education department has been assembled. The team has taken part in professional development provided by consultants from Bridgewater State University and some professors there. The focus of their work with the consultants is to create an equity framework to support our evaluation of potential resources. The team plans to critically evaluate resources using this newly established framework. Vendors were chosen through the careful analysis that included Curate from DESE as well as Ed Reports. The following vendors have been identified: American Reading Company, McGraw-Hill, Pearson, Holt McDougall, and Achieve 3000. The plan is to prepare a presentation to the curriculum subcommittee at its first meeting in the fall or during the late summer if the opportunity presents itself, which I believe it will, as a heads up. Although we remain quite busy at this point and will be through the summer months, it is important to pause and acknowledge that today is the last day of the 2020-2021 school year. There's familiarity with the challenges felt by many in our community. Here I want to acknowledge the bravery and resilience that I saw in every pocket of this community over the past year. From this last day looking forward, I think it's important to embrace those characteristics as a strong foundation and all of the new skills, abilities, and tools as the framework. The future is bright. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Tutwiler. And before we go on to the last bit of business, the adjournment, I'd like just to thank Attorney Markopoulos for being here and filling in for our good friend who's not with us, John Myhouse, but I want to thank Attorney Markopoulos for being here, and thank you for pitching in and helping out as we move through onto the next stage. So thank you all very much. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. If there's no other questions. Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Take a roll call, and we'll go from here.
Member Castellanos?
Yes.
Member Capola?
Yes.
Member Ford?
Yes.
Member Gately?
Yes.
Member Nicholson?
Yes.
Member Satterwhite?
Yes.
Mayor McGee?
Yes.
She has a couple.